spiritual thing.
Grows where you are, it exists where you are.
An intentional journey to open up the pathways
To connect us to something bigger.
It
helps everybody in the equation.
Has been the magic of the people, and it's passed from person to person.
You have to follow through. You have to do the thing. Like happy, safe place.
Is that your logic, or was that something you were told?
Focus on your craft and your practice. Just ask me why. Why in general?
Can you unteach yourself something that society has taught you?
Mystical experiences will always be different.
Your body is your temple.
You've probably been doing certain things your whole life.
You need nothing else other than what you're in right now.
This is Georgina. This is Nike.
And this is Temperance.
And welcome to Occultism with a Side of Salt.
Hello, this is Georgina.
This is Nike.
This is Temperance.
And I'm Olivia.
And welcome to Occultism with a Side of Salt. In this episode, we're going to be talking about elitism, and elitism in the occult community. So if you've been in the occult space for long, you're going to notice there's a lot of elitism. There's a lot of people coming in currently, but because of that, there's sort of a backlash of people, gatekeeping. And to an extent, gatekeeping is necessary. It keeps the community focused on the occult. It keeps the occult separate from related topics like religion or New Age or whatever. But at the same time, it can gatekeep genuine practitioners out. It can create classism. It can create a false sense of elitism based on follower count or any other variety of factors. So in this episode, we're going to be exploring all the aspects of elitism and how it overall is a net negative to our community and how we can helpfully filter out bad ideas, and stuff like that out of our community without being assholes. Because when people are elitist, it creates serious problems. And a lot of the times, the people who are the biggest elitist are not the most versed practitioners or the people who should really be leading our community. So let's break into it.
Per usual, I'll just start us with a hot take. Maybe a good take, maybe a bad take. This is just the take I'm going to give. I recently came across other content that was talking about who is an expert, right? Who is an expert. And when we're talking about elitism in the occult community, we have a lot of chefs in the kitchen, and a lot of people think that they are an expert when they're really not. We're seeing this play out in big ways on social media, specifically TikTok. It's really accessible to have a platform, but just because you have a platform, just because you can get on top of a soapbox and scream out whatever you want, doesn't necessarily mean that you know what you're screaming out, or that it's good information. And regardless, is that we have people doing this for a variety of topics. It's not just occultism. It's every part of spirituality that exists is on TikTok. There's light workers, there's the ascension people, there's the crystal people, the plant people, the Thelema talk apparently has people in it that are not just Georgina. And because we have this, when there's just something psychologically, when someone clicks in, they're like, oh, this person has like 500, 600,000 followers. They must know what they're talking about. That's not necessarily true. A lot of it is actually, now I'm not talking about TikTok specifically, but on social media, a lot of it is performance art. You become an entertainer of sorts when you're on social media, and you make content specifically that would do well on social media, but it creates this false sense of ego and a false sense of elitism, because now we're viewing content creators as elite when they may or may not have the knowledge necessary to actually make the content that they're talking about.
Well, it's really easy to fake it on short form content. In long form podcasting or longer videos, it's really hard to, right? Because what your lack of knowledge starts to crack through. But in a short video, it's really easy. You learn some basic terms, you can come across as an expert. On the note of experts, I find the idea of being an occult or spirituality expert very odd, because there's so many aspects of spirituality. I think it's really impossible to be an expert of everything, right? Like for me, I know a lot about Thelema, I know a lot about ceremonial magic, but if you bring up astrology or all sorts of traditions that I'm not familiar with, I'm very far from an expert. I think anyone who presents themselves as an expert on everything, I'm immediately a little suspect of, because spirituality is so broad. I mean, you could spend 10 lifetimes and you would still have a lot to learn.
I think a big part of knowing who is legitimate is whether or not they can be humble about shit. And I don't mean that humble bragging fake shit. I mean people who can just admit, I don't know anything about this. It's not my area of expertise. I don't know enough. I can direct you to people who seem to know what they're talking about. Being able to say, I don't know, is really, really important. And people who don't say they don't know and just say oh yeah, I know about that. I know about that too. I know about that. and that, even though they're totally separate things. They have no relation. There's a lot that comes with this and that, and I like there's nothing they don't know. That's where it's really fucking suspicious, because the inability to say I don't know is somebody trying to say that they're just better than everybody who says they don't know, because that I know. And so you should just listen to me for clout.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a really big red flag usually is, even if somebody seems to know a lot about a specific topic, they should still be giving you resources of where they got that information in the first place. And it shouldn't be, like, oh, I just got taught by this one person that I'm not going to tell you who it is. Like, it should be, I was taught under this specific person. I took a course. I've, been initiated. I read up and practiced this for X amount of years from these books, from these authors, from these sources.
This was once revealed to me in a dream.
Yes, yeah. Like, oh yes, I woke up one day and I just knew all of these things, and it's like, I don't really believe that.
From my secret sources and my
From
secret order.
Secret sources, all my secrets.
Well, there's a huge rise, and I mean, if you look back in occult history, there are definitely people who've done this, right? Like, you have a lot of Chandlers in the 90s, and like people who like cite the ascended masters or whatever. But a lot of people on social media in particular right now, it's like it's getting bigger, right? People, they'll say information, you'll ask them where they got it, and they'll say my deity, or they'll be like the demiurge, or Thoth, or Artemis. They'll just like cite a spirit, and they'll be like giving like fact information. And I'm like, that's your UPG, That's not like the spiritual laws of the universe. That's what you've learned through your experiential stuff. And I don't think you should be like, well, Kali told me this, so it's certain and it's a spiritual law and it overrides everything everyone else says,
I don't get why there's such like a stray away from saying stuff is UPG. Like, we were talking earlier about like what I found best works in my spell work. It's my UPG that Goldenrod works best for me, because it just does in money spells, or like this thing works better than this thing, or this way of using it works better than this way. The difference is like it. You're allowed to just say it's just what works for me, or it's what I've learned through experimentation. Like, I mean, honestly, that's what a lot of astrology comes down to. To mention that, like, a lot of astrology, yes, is like reading the text and knowing the knowledge, but a lot of it is doing your own research and looking at it, like looking at all these different charts where this thing comes up and seeing how it shows up in these charts in these different ways in people's lives. Like, you have to do the work yourself and then say, I did a lot of research into it, and here's what I have found. You can also share other people who have done similar research, but you can say that you just did the work, because there's no shame in that. And I feel like everybody feels like, in a way, that they have to say that they definitely knew it from a source. It's like, UPG exists and is fine, and it's good for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, on the flip coin, you have the elitists who are specifically in like the ceremonial magic space. They think they're like intellectually superior because they spend a lot of money on really expensive books and they've read more than you, but they don't really practice,
And they have all the tools, the really nice fancy stuff.
Well, their elitism is based in classism. If we really get down to the bottom of it, their pedestal that they put themselves on is that they have these expensive, rare books. They have these tools. They have these mats. They have this whatever that they've invested in, and that's cool if you invest in something. That's actually, like, I'm not being facetious, it's actually really cool that you take the time to invest in your craft and your practice, and you have the ability to. But if your whole ego about your tradition is that you're able to afford these rare books and whatever else, that's actually pretty classist.
You know what? I'm just gonna say it. Having the time available to do a lot of this, like saying that you spend every day doing it, being able, like, not just in a way of like it's my job, because like
you
all
can
of us are
afford
content
that
creators in the occult space. Yeah, the affordability of time. Like, I have to work, I have to put all the time in. Like, even for the stuff that we do online, like doing the content creation, having my regular job, recording the podcast, editing the podcast, managing social media, like all of that takes time. To have the luxury of time often falls into classism, which like was part of the like high magic, low magic thing of like when that was happening around the Victorian era. It was people with the luxury of time and how that sort of impacted why they were able to develop their crafts in that way. Let's just say what it is. The luxury of time is part of the classism. Not saying that if you have the luxury of time that you are classist, but it falls into that. To be able to have that, often you fall into a classist sort of mindset.
Well, because we hear so much about, oh, the daily practice is so important, which I completely agree with. But the idea of what a daily practice is and what people preach to, especially beginners, you know, like when I was beginning and I was still like very secretive about what I was doing, and I was working 3 jobs and struggling to just like, you know, afford milk or whatever. Like I didn't have the time to wait up at certain hours of the night to like make sure that I had it like at full moon capacity or full eclipse or like whatever the fuck it was supposed to be. I wasn't able to, you know, complete a mantra every single day. Like I'm doing the Hecate course. I would not be able to do that if I was still working those 3 jobs. There's no fucking way, because it's so much time. There's so much time that you invest into that. And like that's not a bad thing if you have the time, but to put other people down is where it becomes classist.
I think people misunderstand daily practices a lot
Yeah.
for beginners, right? Like ceremonialists have a tendency to kind of think like a longer daily practice equals better. Really, the important thing is to just be thinking about it and doing it daily. A daily practice can take 2 minutes. It can literally just be setting out a cup of water as an offering. That's a daily practice, but I think we don't talk about that. You know, I think people get the idea of like really big things, you know, doing like the Mass of the Phoenix once a day. Because Crowley mentions to do that one time in one book. And so some people like hold that up on a pedestal, which that's a very difficult ritual to do daily.
I don't even think that's that, but that's not common knowledge. I think that the common conception of what is a daily practice actually comes from Hollywood portrayals. And why are we listening to Hollywood portrayals when they're not even occultists themselves? You know,
No.
and we do have an episode that talks about this. But you know, the concept of daily practice, when most people are first coming in, they've seen movies or TV shows about daily witchcraft practice. They think they're supposed to study things, or they take it with the context of the Bible, and because they're coming out of the church, and so they know like what a daily Bible study looks like. They know what church groups look like, and those things that feel familiar, they try and transpose it into this world, and it doesn't really translate.
No,
Right.
your daily practice should be, when you're first starting, some advice for people who don't have a lot of time. Meditate for 5 minutes before you fall asleep. There
Read
you go.
for a few minutes, honestly. Like I know
Pull a
that
tarot card.
but like I know that just reading, like not a lot of people consider to be daily practice, but honestly some days that is part of my practice, is reading and learning and being able to like in the future apply what I've learned. Doing other things, of course, is also important. Sometimes my daily practice is just like setting out water on the altar.
Also, like if you're doing a daily and you have a day where you're really sick, like I hurt my foot really bad about a year ago, and I couldn't walk for a couple days. And so I couldn't do my daily practice properly. So I just had to visualize it, you know, like I had to, because obviously I wasn't going to stand up on my foot that had been impaled with a nail, right? That's not happening. That's not medically happening. So I had to like just picture it in my head, and I had to kind of work around it. So like obviously there's going to be times where like things may not work, or if you're in a different place, you know, like there's obviously exceptions to all this stuff. Like daily, you should try and aim, you know, it's like a goal, but if things happen, you know,
If things
Yeah,
happen,
you're a
they
shit
happen.
practitioner for not being able to make it.
No.
Like,
Right.
okay,
Yeah, if
see
you're
you
like-
today.
if you're in a cancer ward and you're dying, like priority one should not be like,
I know I need to
I
give my
gotta get
offerings
up
to the
and do my
demiurge.
rest.
No, I'm giving my offerings to the demiurge. That's it.
How will the algorithm know I am loyal if I don't give offerings every day?
Okay, but that's different. That's different because the algorithm requires that. But like, and you know, some could argue that, you know, deities do too. Like, I'm in a devotional relationship with a deity, and it's like that is part of my devotion, is making time to do the things that I said that I was going to do, whether I feel like doing it or not, whether I'm sick or not. So, you know, devotion and daily practice don't have to be these big, massive things. You don't have to be writing things and doing spells and going outside and collecting leaves and whatever the fuck else you're gonna do. Sometimes my daily practice literally just looks like me opening my phone and reading a book on witchcraft for 5 or 10 minutes. That's it. Like,
Well, like let's look at the Christian way of life, because that's the most normalized thing that people usually have. Like the Christian daily practice, if you want to call it that, for some people it's just like you say a prayer at night or over your food, like at meals. Like that's
Daily
it.
practice.
daily
Yeah,
practice.
daily
That
practice.
genuinely is daily practice. That's
Yeah,
daily
it is.
things.
Yeah, well, things like Eucharistic stuff still appears in like certain occult traditions, you know. like setting out a little bit of food for your god or cooking as devotion to Hestia or something, like shit like
Well,
that.
Thanksgiving has a long history of religious use, whether it's Christian or not, so you don't have to be a Christian to do Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving can be done at any point through the day. It can be given devotionally as the sun rises, as the sun sets between each meal. It can even just be that you're walking down the street and you see, like, you hear a pretty bird singing, or you see a house that you like, or something sparked joy in you, and so you give thanks for that joy and that act of life. It's um
Yeah, so I think we should talk about like so when you talk about elitist, I think we should talk about who the elitists are, What do you think in our community makes people feel elite? Because I think of a few common things. I think of years experience, clout, like social media followers, having a book or running a shop,
or a podcast.
being witchy, like having like the aesthetic, the setups, the looks, right? The aesthetic. Reading more books, and I do rituals more often than you. I think those are like the big things that I think of that make people feel elite. What do you guys think?
I see it a lot with tools, honestly. Like, I have this stuff. It could be, like you guys mentioned earlier, like having this cool book, having, like, all of the things, having a big altar space all set up. Like, it's the stuff, not necessarily, like, the look in an aesthetic way, but the look as in, like, having of the things and having it be, like, clearly I have all these things. Like, look at how many books I have on my shelf. I'm so witchy, and these were so expensive. This book cost me $500. I'm so devoted to my practice. You're not devoted because you didn't spend $500. Like, that's what I see a lot of. Like, I spent more money than you because I'm that devoted.
Well, if you go on r/occult, which I did for the first time a couple weeks ago, because I don't spend much time on Reddit, if you filter by top, every single top post is an altar setup or a bookshelf with expensive books. That's every top post for the like top 50 post.
I think that the things that I see there's two things that I'm going to call out specifically. One is long acrylic nails. They have to be long. If they're short, they don't count. But if you have the long acrylic nails, they're usually holding something or holding a book or pointing to something, whatever it is. There's picture or video happening.
I have those photos.
Yeah, I know you have those photos. I know you.
Yeah,
I literally know that. Yeah,
there
right
it
there.
is. There you go.
I know that Olivia specifically has put on like press-on nails to record a video of your hands doing something. Like,
oh yeah, I straight up tell people, I'm like, look, I got my press-ons today because you have to look at my fucking hands.
Yeah, like, so long acrylic nails is one thing, and then the second is books, but specifically books that now I'm this is actually an accidental call out for myself, but I don't do it in this way, but books that are either really difficult to source or books that have not yet been released and the person got it from like the publisher or the author themselves directly. I feel like that's a way in which some of the social media occult community like flexes. They're like, look at this, I read this book, I have this book, you can't even get it yet. Like, and I see that happen on a lot of podcasts and a lot of blogs. And like, that's amazing that you've read something. Stop caressing your books. I genuinely think that's like a way that people flex, specifically like influencers and podcasters, and it's really, really good, like, because I'm also an author. It's really good as an author. We really want people to share our work before it comes out. That way people know that this is something that they can get into. If they're interested in it, they can pre-order it, and that's a really important part of our chain as like writers and authors and creators, is that our work gets released early to certain people. But some people use that as like a clout stepping stone, like, I have access to early material and you don't.
I think another thing that people will use to like kind of step up on that elite platform are the people that they know. I mean, like, obviously all of us, it's like we have our little group, but like, I think that can be seen in a way too, like, oh, well, I know this person, I know these authors because like I too have clout. And so because I have clout and they have clout, we have like double the clout, and like, because I know this person.
I'm friends with this person.
Yeah. So it's like I'm friends with this person who knows all these things or whatever.
Which, being someone's friend doesn't mean you know anything.
No, it doesn't, but that doesn't change the way they're treated online.
I have a lot of stupid friends. I'm just gonna put that out
Oh,
there.
same.
My friends being friends with me, or like me being friends with smarter friends.
That is not a flex to be friends with me. It's
Yeah,
not.
My
not a
friends are
flex.
Not
embarrassed.
a flex to be
me.
friends with
My
me.
friends are embarrassed.
My friends in real life know exactly, like, because there's also something to be said about like the distance between the online persona and who you are in real life. And who I am in real life, my friends mock me relentlessly for the fucking weird goblin shit. And it's not like in a cute, fun way. Like, it's not a flex to be like, I'm friends with Nike. Because some people would be like, yeah, ew.
Yeah, literally all the people who are closest to me are gonna be like, she's fucking weird, bro.
When people have this status, it's really hard for me to quantify exactly how they like try to use it on others. But like, how have you guys seen people trying to like use their elite status
Money.
over other people
To get money.
That's true.
Sponsorships. I've definitely been asked. Here's the things that I have been asked as me as Temperance Alden. People have asked me to get them in touch with my publisher. People have asked me to send them free copies of my book, and people have asked me if they can have a list of companies that I work with or that sponsor me so that they can approach them as well. And like, it's pretty well known that I don't actually work with companies. Like, I don't take sponsorships or anything because I'm not in a position where I would. Like, I don't really make YouTube content that often, and I'm not a fashion blogger. So in what way would I be working with another company? So those are ways that I've definitely seen people approach me from a money aspect.
Courses. I see that all over and like some people have really good courses. I have taken courses from other people, but I think that's a dangerous slope there of like, oh well, this person has a big following and they kind of pose themselves to know everything or to know so much.
Wait, I think we're on different pages. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying is that people posture that they have valuable information to give in a course.
Yes. And then they will sell the course, which like sometimes is like, I'm not saying like you shouldn't, but there are definitely people just because they have that that following and they have that clout, like they are able to be like, oh, I'm making a course, and people just believe them because they have the numbers.
Same
and
with
the
books
aesthetic.
too.
Yeah,
People who want to
same thing
write a
with
book
books.
to like just usually for a cash grab or because they think that they're like so popular so they have something to say, but some of these people don't have anything to say, or they don't have anything relevant to say, or they don't have anything correct to say, so they just like have a book. So congratulations, you have a shitty book. Good job. I don't like good job. Your clout's gonna be from having a shitty course or a shitty book, and that's what you're gonna become known for. Not your platform that you had. You're gonna ruin your platform for garbage. Enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I think people think that numbers equal good occult knowledge, which is not true. I mean, to be a successful content creator is a combination of luck, marketing skills, enough knowledge, to like make content. But it's not all knowledge,
A lot
It's
of
a
it's
mix of
aesthetic.
things.
Like, if I can like derail the conversation just a little bit,
Yeah,
it's
well, aesthetics
something
are
that
relevant.
I've definitely seen, because it's like obviously my content's very aesthetic. Like, I love making aesthetic content. I love it. But I see there's that fine line between like YouTubers especially, of people who put out really good information but none of their videos are aesthetic or visually pleasing, compared to other YouTubers who their information is either okay or just really bad, but their aesthetic is so good that it draws people in and then gives that false idea or that false view that they know more than they do. So then it's like hard, because then people who see past that, it's like, okay, if I'm aesthetic, then people will just assume that my information is bad just because I put a lot of effort into that, and vice versa. Of like, it's shitty that there's a lot of people out there who have really, really good information, but their aesthetic isn't attention grabbing enough, so it's not getting out to the people that need it.
Yeah. Some of the best occult content is like 3-hour-long lecture uploads that are uploaded from a conference of someone standing in front of like a board.
Yep, and it's all like
They're-
8 pixels.
Yep.
It's recorded
I'm
in the
serious.
back of the room. It's a little hard to
Yeah.
hear.
Well, that's some of the best informational content, to be
It
honest.
is. Yeah, it really is. And it's unfortunate, and it's like, are you willing to, put in the dedication to watch that boring ass video to get the really good information, even if it takes you 8 different times to sit down and listen to it?
The thing about online content is it has to be attention grabbing and it has to be something
Yeah.
people are interested in. So because of that, the majority of online content's very introductory and beginner oriented.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
a lot of the really successful people online only know how to talk to beginners. So they
Mhm.
kind of end up like the water's too deep for them. You know what I mean? And that kind of hurts them in the long run.
Yeah.
Well, it's so hard too, like to stay a little bit derailed. Like for creators who want to get deeper, like I feel this obligation to make the 101 content so that I can reference the 101 content in later videos when I want to talk
Yes.
more. So I have to talk about astrology 101 of like how to read a chart, what the planets mean. I have to go over that shit before I can be like, so Georgina showed me this planetary ritual. Here's how I've been using it. Here's how and I want to go into that in the future, but like I can't do that. And I can't just like throw people into planetary magic. I can't just throw it and be like, this is what you do. And here it is.
Yeah. I mean, like, you could, but it wouldn't help because people would be asking those questions anyway.
Yep. So
Yeah.
you just have to like have that base video. So in the like step 2 video, you could say, I have a video about these basics.
Mhm.
Go watch it here and then come back. Like
Correct.
you gotta have it, and it really sucks because like everybody's just repeating the same beginner content half the time, and it's really hard to make a new slant on it.
See, this
Yeah.
is why I'm not
Yeah.
a regular YouTube content creator, because I don't give a fuck. I'm just going to create the content I want to create at the time in which I feel like it's necessary for the community to have that content. So whether that's on Twitter or Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or whatever, if I'm feeling motivated to make that content because there's been discourse about the topic, I'm just going to make the content. And I don't really care if it's on the level of someone who's never entered the community, because that content is most of the time in direct reaction to something else. Like, I really only make content at the request of people who need something cleared up.
Well, also the thing about influencers is really interesting because prior to like 10, 15 years ago, we really didn't have occult influencers, right? The elites of the community were different, you know? The community elites were people who run shops, people who write books, people who present at conferences, you know? The elites have shifted. And so it's made a new elitism. Because when I read people's stories about like elitism from the past, like, oh, I'm an initiated Gardnerian Wiccan, I'm a 3rd degree Wiccan, versus I'm a solitary Wiccan, so people treated me like crap, right? Like you hear those stories from like the 90s, and they don't really hold up anymore, right? Because being a high degree Wiccan, I mean, that doesn't really mean much anymore to the average occultist because Wicca's not trendy, you know? Like the old elites are treated like the what is an elite has really shifted. Well,
So-
have you read Agrippa?
Agrippa traumatized.
you
Agrippa
read Agrippa,
traumatized me.
bro?
Please don't bring up that name.
Have you read Agrippa? I feel like every elitist occultist tries to give, this is like the elitist occultist signature, especially on Discord. They give Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy to the baby witches. They're always like, well, you want to know a good
Perfect. This
beginner
is your
book?
test.
Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy is a great beginner text, which it's a great book. I think everyone should read it. But it's the Lawnmower Manual of Occultism. Do not recommend that to like, hi, I'm a cottage witch. I've been practicing for 3 days. I really like plants and crystals. Please give me a book. And you're like,
Agrippa.
ah, yes, Agrippa.
Agrippa.
Like, no, give the, I'm a cottage plant girl, like Cunningham. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
But here's the thing. Okay, how do we as a community combat or curb this from happening? And that's a question that we need to regularly ask ourselves. Why are we putting, first off, influencers on pedestals? Okay, what? And now I know I'm gonna sound like an episode that we had a few times ago of like, where's your degree? Where's your occultism degree? But really, we need to vet the people that we're elevating to these statuses. So let's say you have a really favorite content creator that makes YouTube videos that's name is Olivia on the internet. Have you vetted this person? Have you
I hate
vetted?
that bitch.
Yeah, God save the queen. But have you?
Don't recommend. Don't recommend.
0 out of 10. 0 out of 10 stars.
Whoa.
So no, but you know, like you stumble across someone's YouTube video, it grabs your attention because it's really well made, and you know you're into it. You subscribe. Okay, well, you as the content consumer should research, you know, okay, what did they use to, like, you know, what were their sources for this, and does what they're saying match up? If I do a quick Google search on how to make a money bowl, does Olivia's money bowl, go with the kind of general scheme of like how other people are doing this thing, or if Olivia is talking about XYZ factually, if I do a quick Google search on like, can you do magic during an eclipse? Olivia says no. If I do a quick Google search and I see something else, those are things that we as consumers have a responsibility to do. It's not the producer, it's not the content producer's responsibility to make you do your research on their topic.
Right.
Anything I disagree with is propaganda.
I just want to clarify what I said. I want to say it one more time. It is not the content creator's responsibility for you to do your research to decide if you agree or disagree with their content. A content creator is going to make content from their point of view, with their experiences and with their level of knowledge. And it's up to you to decide if, especially in the spiritual world, if you agree or disagree based on your experiences and knowledge and understanding.
Yes. Make a money bowl with vinegar and black pepper.
Thank you, Olivia.
You're welcome.
So gracious.
No, I think that that's like a really good point, is especially with like on the creator side, right? That's kind of terrifying for people to only take my word for it and no one else's. That's a terrifying thought of mine, and I think in at least every one of my videos I always say, please God, cross-reference me and everything else that you find. I'm not an expert, because it's so scary to think that, like I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to put mistakes of mine that maybe I did believe or did do out there as my content and be like, yes, this is a thing. And then I'll be corrected on it. But it's like, the thing is at that time I believed that, right? And so it's like, if I'm not being cross-referenced on that and people are just taking my word for it, that's terrifying, because then like I am the stream of misinformation, right? Like that's
the misinformation machine.
The misinformation, that's me.
Disinformation.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Disinformation is like, the New Agers really like calling things disinformation.
Is that like fake news? Is that the new term?
It's kind of like,
yeah, it's fake news.
Disappointing and wrong.
Yeah, it's fake news. It's fake news stuff. Like, that's disinfo. I'm a disinfo machine, personally.
So then, okay,
let's talk about...
No, let Olivia speak. Let Olivia speak. Olivia,
let me speak. I am elite. Let me speak. Thank you. Yes, bow down to me. So like, but like with that said, like I know a lot of people who, or I look up to a lot of people who I have also been a student under, but I see them as elite. So then like what does make somebody elite then in that case? Because like I don't consider myself elite as much as I would love to have that title. There's no fucking way. But like,
I think the title of elite's going to change on person to person based on their priorities. So for me, I don't think I would actually use the term elite. It's more of just an understanding that this person is someone that I look up to, I respect. This person is someone who I think has good information. So, Jason Miller is someone that I really respect in our community. He's someone that puts out amazing information. Would I use the term elite? No. I would never use the term elite, I think, to describe someone. I would probably use the word respect. But, Jason Miller is someone absolutely. Judica Illis is someone that I really respect, that has put out a body of literature. People that I don't necessarily agree with, that I respect. Silver Ravenwolf, I really respect her work. So it just really comes down to, deciding for you what is a priority. How did, and I know Silver Ravenwolf's going to be controversial, so I'm going to explain that take, is that her work directly influenced every witch that grew up as a witch after her books were released. Like, her body of work influenced the kind of newer internet witch culture directly. I mean, we can see her thoughts and her theories, like, because her work was so accessible to teenage girls. Her work, like, really formed what later became internet witch culture, what later became Tumblr witches. And I know that she's torn apart to a million pieces because people call her fluffy or they say that her information is better, whatever. You can say whatever you want about her, but she really influenced the direction of our community. And for that, you know, I acknowledge that. So that's someone that I would respect.
Yeah, I suppose the word elite is like a very condescending word to use to describe, not condescend, but like it like makes them sound condescending.
Well, we get stuck in like the idea of needing like mentors. I think is a big part of it. Like someone has to be better than me. So we get stuck in like the mentality of better and worse or greater and lesser. So we see teachers as being like, I'm really big. I'm better than you. Okay.
I'm better than
You know who's
Bitch.
an elite?
And-
You know who's an elite? Honest to God,
Me.
Damien Eccles. Damien Eccles is an elite.
Davey Eccles is elite.
Well, I think that there's an elitism. You mentioned the fluffy thing. I think this anti-fluffy stuff is an elitism. I think there's an elitism in my practice is darker than yours. My practice is more traditional than yours. You see it a lot from like people who identify as like trad witches. You know what I mean? Like I use dirt. My practice uses dirt and bones, so I'm better than you crystal girls.
I peed in
you
a
know?
jar. Would you pee in a jar?
I'll do it again.
I'll fucking cut you from my shit. Fuck off.
Yeah, well, I feel like there's this
I'm
straw
darker than
man.
you.
There's this straw man of the woo witch, you know what I mean? Like the soft witch who like has crystals and burns herbs, who like is seen of as lesser than the I use skulls and have dark aesthetics and work with demons. You know what I mean? Like I feel like
That
there's
comes
an anti-fluffy
exactly.
elitism.
That goes back to the Hollywood portrayal of the witch, because whether or not we want to acknowledge it, Hollywood has ingrained in everyone that witchcraft is edgy and dark and gothic and all these other things that do not fit the bill of a light worker. They do not fit the bill of a crystal witch or a green witch. They don't fit the bill of hearth witch. They fit the bill of left hand path and some of that heavier stuff.
But even then, like, just because something's darker doesn't mean it's, you know, deeper. Like, there's a whole thing about dark fluff, you know? There's some people who are edgy with no real substance behind it. And that's, in my opinion, I think dark fluff is just as bad as regular fluff,
Hard
you know?
agree.
Absolutely.
Hard agree. I'm so dark and edgy. I'm fucking cool. You wouldn't it comes out as like you wouldn't understand my stuff,
Yeah,
man. It's
super,
like
punk. Oh my god, it
Spoken
brings me
word
back to the punk
poetry.
rock emo
yes.
days.
Look,
in
you
high
gotta wear
school.
Killstar. Wear all Killstar.
Nobody
with the demon.
understands me.
If you
Read,
Dolls
like,
kill.
here's the thing is
Yeah,
that
don't-
like Killstar wasn't a thing when I was goth. So like we had Trip. That was like the thing.
Yeah, trip pants.
Oh my god.
You know what I mean? Like, there is that, you know, that I'm darker equal better.
There
When
really
there's
is.
so much depth to things like plant magic, you know what I mean?
There
Like,
yeah.
there's a
is.
lot of complexity
I mean,
and depth. Like, if you're doing
poisons.
especially
Both
if
of
you're
us.
working with poisons or using like physical alchemy, you know, like people who make like tinctures and like go into really depth with that type of stuff, like that can get really complex really quickly. Especially people who do physical alchemy. Y'all scare me. Y'all are intense.
Well, one of the
But
most
that's-
intense people I know is somebody who works mainly with like herbs, is more of a hearth witch. She is so fucking intense. It's my former roommate. So fucking intense, so knowledgeable about like shit that works. She is like, she knows exactly how to fuck you up. She knows what things will help you a lot. She can give you fucking herbal remedies. She had this great like cramp tea that was amazing, but like she would look like very soft and sweet, but she's so knowledgeable.
Those
And
are
it's
the
people
ones.
thinking that you need to be like dark and like wear all
Knowledge.
black and be fucking mysterious. Like, no, you don't have to be mysterious in order to be good, and you don't have to be like dark and edgy. You can be so soft and sweet and still have a great in-depth knowledge and
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it goes right back to the whole, like, blessing and bane grows on one stalk, right?
Yes.
Like, it's that whole thing, again, of, like, don't be like that. You don't have to, like, you have to understand both sides of it, and you can't, like, only want to be like, no, I'm super fluffy, I only like crystals, and I'm, like, I never hurt anybody, and it's, like, you know, you have to understand the depth of the other side, and same thing with the darker side, right? Quote, air quotations, of, like, you can't just be running around being like, I pee in jars and use skulls, and, like, I'm so fucking dark, you don't even understand, bro, and it's, like,
The universe
can't
is
take
going to
either of
get
them
you. The universe
seriously.
is going to get you law of 3. You just don't understand.
Yeah.
You just don't understand.
Rule of 3, blessed be.
Humble yourself. but also like lift yourself up. I think it's sort of like a dual coin of like
Ooh,
don't
yeah.
think you're better than everybody, but also stop thinking that you're lesser. Like the point about like mentors and teachers and thinking that they're higher up than you. Stop thinking that people are better than you. They might know more about this one topic, but you know, like I don't know shit about Thelema, but I know about astrology. Vice versa. Like Georgina's not elite compared to me because she knows Thelema, and I'm not
She's
elite
elite
compared
because
to
of
her
her
because I know
hats. Let's get
astrology.
it straight.
True. That's where
Fair.
the elitism
True.
comes in. Get
I
hats.
fashion elitism is different. Fashion elitism is valid. Occult elitism is not.
I think curbing that is that if we can just encourage people to always constantly exist in a state of curiosity rather than trying to get to a goal of like I know this amount or I can do X, Y, and Z rituals, whatever. It's like just exist in a constant state of curiosity. Like you always have more things to learn. So do the teachers. And like you don't need to see it in a way of like, oh fuck, I have so much to study. See it more in a way of like the world is such a playground. Like you have all these opportunities and like all these things to discover and to experiment with, you know, like then you're not trying to see it in a way of like I'm going to be better and more powerful. Like you're just seeing it in a way of like a childlike way of like there's a lot of things to discover and kind of play with in this practice.
I'm an Aries sun, so I'm suggesting that you call it out. If you see someone posturing that they're elite, just directly say it to them. Like, why are you promoting this book? A super fascist wrote it. Why are you, have you, or, you know, even like,
No subtweet week is the best thing that ever happened to us.
but even like, okay, so Georgina is over here with her little hat and be like, what, you think your Crowley hat makes you cool?
Yes.
All right, but at
Yes,
least you're admitting
always.
it. I've called you directly out. I think your hat looks like
Well,
a
like-
pillow.
Okay. All right.
Oh, also, if someone gives themselves really dramatic titles, be sus of that.
Oh,
If anyone self-calls themselves an epistemist in particular.
Here's what you
Oh,
really
what?
need to look out for if someone calls themselves
It's bad.
Soror Da'at. Canceled.
Look,
Frat
if
or
someone
Danny
gives
canceled.
themselves like super dramatic titles and are like, I'm an 11th degree, I'm a 99th
I actually
degree,
don't
I'm
like
a...
hearing the degree in the if they introduce themselves to me with their degree, I'm out. Like, that's not relevant to me because your degree doesn't. To me, degree actually does not dictate your knowledge on the topic. It dictates your time into the topic, and how
Well, also,
well you
like,
conform.
someone who's in an... It's relevant in an order. It's not relevant outside of that.
Yeah,
if
like
I'm not in your order,
so it's not relevant to me.
yeah, like, I'm not in your order. I don't really care if you're a 39th degree. I think just, like, don't, you know, if someone, like, postures a ton or is like, I have 900,000 followers, I've been interviewed by whoever, just be sus of it, you know?
If
Like,
someone's name
sure,
dropping,
maybe
you should probably think to yourself, why the fuck are they name dropping? This is irrelevant to the conversation.
Why do they have to use other people in order to make them seem legit?
Yeah, just be critical, you know, have a critical eye, pay attention to this stuff, pay attention to warning signs.
Yeah.
If someone's like culty or clearly just trying to cash in or whatever, like just be aware, have a critical mind, and just, you know, be attentive.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, for both calling it out when you see it, but also making sure that you can be aware if you are either doing it or on the verge of doing it. Because it's like, again, everybody has their own practices. Like, I don't know shit about astrology. I don't know anything about crystals. I don't know anything about Thelema. You know, like, I don't know why people follow me. No, but like,
No, you know stuff.
Faker!
I know.
Fake witch!
You heard it here first,
Fake.
you guys. I'm a fucking liar.
You know what? Let me tell you what
Grifter.
Olivia knows a lot about, alright? I'm gonna give the list right now.
Yeah, let's hear
I'm gonna
it.
give you the list. Olivia knows about aperture. Olivia knows about camera lenses. Olivia knows.
Damn! Scathing!
You know, the sad thing is, I don't even know that much about that shit either.
But your videos are so good.
Thank you.
They're
I fake
really
it till
pretty.
I make it.
Here's some real truth, okay? Is that if I were to have a question, like, folk magic is a really wide spectrum, so
It
I'm
is.
on a different end of the folk magic spectrum than Olivia is. So if I had a question about certain aspects of certain types of folk magic, I'd probably go to Olivia and be like, "Bro, what the fuck is this?" I wouldn't know anything about it.
Well, and I've done the same with you,
Yeah.
Temp. Like, I've definitely come to you for questions about folk, and like I also practice folk magic, so it's like, you are no less or more than anybody else, no matter what you're doing. So I think that's a good way to curb that.
My final thought is that elitism is rampant in our community, and even though you may think you're gatekeeping for a helpful reason, you think someone's not ready for a certain ritual, you think they're not ready for a certain concept, you can take it too far, right? Like, it's one thing to be like, yeah, I don't really think you're ready. I think that Goetia may be a little outside of your threshold right now. I think that you should focus on something, a little simpler first, right? Like, that's very kind, right? But going, you're too dumb for this, or have you read Agrippa yet? Like, that is when you're being a conceiting asshole, right? Or you're like, I won't talk to you because I have 9 million followers and you look like shit. Like, that type of stuff is very mean. Just, if you're trying to gatekeep in a helpful way, just say, hey, I think that you may want to learn these foundations first, right? Say something like that. You don't need to be a dick about it. You don't need to be like, well, I've spent this much money on books. I don't know why you would ever need to say the dollar amount that you spend on your supplies. I think that's kind of weird. But just don't. Just try being a kind person. Remember that every occultist is another human being. You don't know their practice. You don't know their life. So just be nice.
My final thoughts are that nobody's better than anybody else, and I think that putting people up on a pedestal, consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously, whatever the right fucking word is, like, putting people up on a pedestal or putting yourself up on a pedestal, either direction, like, nobody's better than anybody. You're not worse than anyone. You're also not better than anyone. Just, like, forget that, and just remember that everyone has different skills. Nobody's better than you just because they know more about something, because there's probably plenty of shit that you know way more about than they do, and it doesn't make you any better, doesn't make them any worse. Just fucking throw that whole concept out the fucking window.
My final thought is that you should always cross-research any content that you come across, whether that be in a book or whether that be online. Books can be wrong too.
My final thought is not going to be new. Sorry, Temp. It's the same thing. Is to approach everything with curiosity. I feel like that's a huge, and approach everybody that maybe you're questioning with curiosity. So cross-reference, but do it out of curiosity and not out of spite. Usually, that's it.
I have to get Patreon up.
I'll do the how. If you want to support Occultism with Side of Salt, we have a Patreon. You get extended shows, pre-shows, video versions, and special episodes. We really appreciate it. And thank you for listening to the podcast.
And we're going to thank our patrons as soon as it loads. Yes, perfect. Okay, hold on. We're getting there. I remembered. Y'all saw it.
Oh, do we get to say names?
Yeah, we get to say names. Do you want to read the names? We do $10 and up. So
I'm dyslexic.
Oh
this
my
will
god.
be fun.
Oh my god, there's so many now.
Bro.
So we'll just do first names, or if it's like something like this or this, like that's fine, but just like, you know.
Got it.
So I'll put the mouse here so you can scroll, because we have enough to fucking
Where
scroll
are we
for
starting?
a lot. Right at the bottom, and then just go up.
Oh,
just for $10.
Oh, just 10.
Yeah,
I
just
see.
for
Okay.
here.
All right. $10 Patreons. Thank you. Victoria, The Eclectic Gemini, Temple Ruff, Sophia, Rose, Ree, Nico. Does that say nauseated?
It sure does.
I love it. Nauseated. Melissa, Megan, Maria, Liam, Lee, Kat, Kai, Jessica, Dungareed.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Do it, Sue.
Doitsu. It's Doitsu.
Nope.
Nope. You're Doitsu now.
You are. That's always how I've said it, and I love you for it. Melissa. Is that Jane? Janine.
I'm ready for this one. I need you to pronounce this name.
Jai Lee.
Haha! I'm not the only one! It's Jay.
Okay. Jay Lee. Jay, Evan, Barry, and Amy.
We all know Amy. So thanks, guys. We love you, and we're so glad for the support. There's so many more of you every single week, and like it means so much to us, like legitimately, that we're able to do so much more because you guys support us, and we're glad that you enjoy the stuff that we give you in exchange for your Patreon money. So, you know, goods and services have been exchanged right here in this moment.
Cherish
You
that.
can find me under Georgina Rose or .darling, DAAT, on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon.
I'm Warrior Witch Nike. You can find me almost everywhere as Warrior Witch Nike or Warrior Witch N. Instagram, YouTube, Twitch now as well. What up? I don't know what I've already said. Social media, I'm everywhere. Also, just before we forget, because I'll fucking forget, OWAS also has our own Twitch now. We're going to try to stream there a little bit more often. It's OWAS Stream. So OWAS Streams.
I'm Temperance Alden. My book Year of the Witch is available everywhere books are sold.
Amazing. I am Olivia Graves. I know my name. I'm Olivia Graves. You can find me as the Witch of Wanderlust on Instagram, on YouTube, and I think it's Wanderlust Witch on Twitter. I don't know. My Twitter doesn't matter, so. But yeah, I'm on all platforms, and I'll see you there.
Except Twitch.
Except Twitch. I lurk on Twitch. I watch my friends stream, but I never stream.
It's fair.
Yeah, I am a lurker.
And this has been...
Okay.
You told us
No,
all, you said we were going to count down!
I saw Georgina wanting to end, so I just launched us in.
This has been Occultism with a Side of Salt!
This has been Occultism with a Side of Salt.
Occultism with a Side of Salt.
This has been Occultism with a Side of Salt.
Perfect.
Non-tangible thing.
Grows where you are, it exists where you are.
An intentional journey to open up the pathways to connect us to something bigger.
It helps everybody in the equation.
It has been the magic of the people, and it's passed from person to person. You have to follow through. You have to do the thing.
Like happy, safe place.
Is that your logic, or was that something you were told? Focus on your craft and your practice.
Just ask me why.